Good morning, everyone. This is the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. I will be joined shortly by my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow, and we are going to be joined by what we affectionately call our resident used truck specialist, Mr. Ray Veenenan. Um, Ray is a great person to have on the show. We want to talk about kind of look into and see what's going on in the used truck market and things of that nature. So if you guys would do us a huge favor, like, share, and subscribe to the video. It helps us get out to a broader algorithm on all of the different platforms that we're trying to broadcast on. So if you guys would do that, that would be a huge, huge help for us. And also, if you know anyone that may find this information useful or entertaining, by all means, share the show with them as well. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we won't want to belabor the point any longer. Let me welcome in my co-host, Mr. Chuck Snow. Good morning, Chuck. How are you?
I'm doing well this morning, Rico. How you doing, buddy?
I really cannot complain. You know, as they say, the early bird gets the worm, and we're up pretty early this morning getting this one, getting this
We're
show
getting
in the
this
books.
warm. Well, with no further ado, let's bring on Ray Veenenan. Just for our guest information, Ray is the Vice President of Remarketing for Rush Truck Centers of Canada. He's a consummate professional. He knows his stuff. He's been around the truck market, both new and used, for about almost 40 years, 30, 40 years that I know of. I guess that makes me old. But Ray started when he was about 4 or 5 in the sales industry. So with no further ado, good morning, Ray.
Hey, good morning, guys. Yeah, and it has been about 30 years, but it's been a wonderful 30 years. I'll say that much.
That's a great, you know what? The best people in the world. They really are. You know, yesterday I was down in North Carolina looking at a truck and met this family, you know, and they were into trucks and trucking, and they had a young fellow, 21 years old, that had started a dump truck business. He sells dump trucks only from municipalities. And this kid is like, he's got a going concern at 21 years old. He's been doing it since he was 16, you know, and his father and I hit it off. The kid and I hit it off. You know, it's just fantastic. It's like one great big family out there for the most part. And that's what I'm sure brought you into the industry years ago.
Absolutely. It is great. And the people are, as we get older, you and I have talked about this before. It's really now I mean, we all need money to survive, but it's the network and the friends that we've made over the years, which is just lovely.
Yes.
Right? And thanks to Rico, I think I told you, Chuck, I was down in Florida in February for just a quick in and out. And I bumped into, or actually I made a stop and had breakfast with one of Rico's friends when I was down there, Eddie, which was really nice. So,
oh, well, I'm glad, you know what? I'm glad to hear Rico didn't buy you a trip to Florida, because if he was, I want one too.
I got a quick question for you, Ray, to kind of start us off, and I'm not sure if you can even answer this one because I'm not sure how much of it you even deal with it. But I'm just going to throw it at you just really quickly, because it's kind of like all the thing going on in the news, and Chuck is going to really kind of chuckle at this one. But how much, as far as with all this electrification stuff, with everything going on, how much is that stuff coming down the pike as far as on a manufacturer's level? How much are they really? Is there a lot of pressure from government entities to really get this thing pushed off in the larger Class 8 trucking class, or is it kind of just more and more publicity on as far as the manufacturers of those type of equipments is concerned?
I refuse to answer on the grounds. No, I think I'm seeing a bit of a slowdown. We are still pursuing it as OEMs on a certain level. I think you'll notice as Ford has announced, they've pushed their electrification or building of these units back here in Ontario to 2027, I believe. And they feel they're just not really ready for it yet. And I think, you know, initially it was, and conceptually it was great. And I think it was pretty well received. It's hugely expensive. You know, I will tell you, the drivers that come and take one for a test drive and sit in it love them. They like how quiet they are. They like how responsive they are. The braking, all of that stuff. But it is, you know, it's still you have to, as drivers now already plan their routes, they're planning a lot more now when you become, married to an electric vehicle, because
Right.
you've only got so much distance, and you want to make sure there's a charger where you're going, and you want to make sure you have time to charge it, excuse me. And, but it hasn't gone away. I don't think it will. There's that and other fuels they're talking about as well. So, excuse me.
Yeah, the charging networks. I think that's still probably going to be one of the Achilles heels of the whole situation, is having a proper charging network, and also, like you said, I don't know if you can help us with that, but starting out, I guess, because all these are brand new practically. Price range wise, the ballpark, do you know a price range on what one of those trucks run?
Yeah, I'm embarrassed to tell you, because we haven't sold any at a class 8 level yet. We have a couple straight trucks, and I think they're around the 400K mark, if I'm not mistaken.
The chassis, Ray?
That's with a van body on it, yeah.
Oh, with a van body, okay.
And we have one, if anybody wants to come and take one for a test drive, if you're in Ontario and you're in the GTA, the Toronto area, give me a call. I'd set you up with one of our sales guys. And it is fun to drive. It's neat to drive. It's certainly an experience. Excuse me. There's a garbage truck. One of our customers here, Mterra, is driving around in a Mack, electrified Mack garbage truck, which is really cool. And I believe it's a program put on with the city, Region of Peel and Mterra. Again, very expensive, but it's they're kind of taking the forefront and leading the pack in this. So,
okay, all right. Well, I apologize for putting you on the hot seat first.
Guys, it's funny. We're talking a little bit about electric trucks before we get into the used trucks. The ones that seem to be in front of this whole concept, it's a couple of young fellows out in Merritt, British Columbia, in Canada, and they have developed an electric engine with and they're retrofitting. They're retrofitting big class 8 trucks, and I'm talking about the old long nose Pete's and Kenworth, the logging trucks actually, but now they're going to be able to do pickup trucks, diesel pickup trucks, and they electrify them, but they put a small diesel engine on them to produce the electricity, almost like a generator. And there was some pushback from the British Columbia government. These guys single-handedly went out and lobbied against them and won. And I think these guys they've got the real deal, what's going to work. The big problem with these things logistically to run them up and down the road is, because I have heard interviews with this one woman in, I think she's in California and works for one of the big breweries. And excuse me, she's used them for the last year or two for local beer runs, and she's been highly successful. But it's still, when I think about it, it's a public relations stunt, because yes, she's not polluting, but she's spending, as Ray said, and these are for class 7 trucks. So she's probably spending close to the same or more as what Ray was talking about, $400,000, is working the truck for about 8 hours a day. Then the truck has to be plugged in for another 16 hours or something on a slow charge.
Yeah.
Or 12 or 16. So you're losing the use of that truck. So you know what? Financially, excuse me, guys. Financially, as as somebody that's responsible for money, if you have financial responsibilities, you could never greenlight this thing unless there was a payback somehow with government grants or public relations. If you got that much recognition from the public, then of course I think you could justify it. But other than that, very difficult.
But don't Yeah, and don't forget all that these grants, and there's lots of them going around. That's still all coming out of yours and my pocket, and
Yes.
it's a nice green effect, and it's a great political statement. But unfortunately, it's not real. And Chuck, when you called me last night, my friend Michael, who was with me, loaned me a book. You and I might have talked about this probably a year ago, called Platinum Man, and this was
Ah,
a guy named Steve Kearney kind of revolutionized mining, platinum mining in South Africa. And the amount it takes to mine that little bit that we need for electric vehicles far outweighs any positive green effect. And I read an article the other day that said, like, you take an electric car, if you take all the mining and the building of that car, it takes 7 full years to become zero emissions. And then at the end of those 7 years, you have to buy a new battery. So you start the circuit all over again. Now, that's just something I read. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But I'm not convinced. And we just need to stop giving government money out.
Well, yeah, I agree. And you know what? I read something recently about the new trucks, and I heard an interview this week on I think it may have been Transport Topics Radio, but I heard an interview recently, and it said, when you take into consideration with these new trucks, although like on a brand new truck, the ones that companies like Rush are selling, the pollution coming out of that stack is, it's 1/60th of what it used to be. So it's pretty damn good. These things are, the air that comes out of that stack is cleaner than what goes into it. But when you break it down and you hear about having to manufacture this DEF, and you take that into effect, and you have to haul it, and you have to distribute it, and then you have, let's not kid ourselves, we have an awful lot of broken down trucks being towed all over the place. You see them all over. Probably one of the best businesses right now is being in towing, because those guys are busy. And I have a friend up the road that has a tow company, heavy haul, and he says he's given up on hauling accidents. He doesn't need it. He just hauls broken down trucks all over the place. So when you think of all this, and it's a known fact, these things aren't like the old mechanical engines. Are we really saving that much of the atmosphere?
Yeah, it's a huge political statement, right?
Yeah. I think we may be just kidding ourselves.
Yeah, agreed.
This may just be busy work, making things look good when they're really not. We've got the stench from whatever, and we're just covering it up with room spray.
Exactly.
Well, to get back on task, to talk about the things that we brought you on for, Ray, I'll tell you, we have went from one end of the spectrum all the way to the other one. How hard has the pendulum swung since the pandemic when it comes to the used truck market right now?
I could be political on just about anything right now, but it is, Rico, you're right. It's gone from here down to here, where it's interesting the way the whole market is going, and it's not just because of COVID, as people like to blame. It's greed, and one thing, as Chuck alluded to during my introduction, I have been in the business a long time, as you guys have, and we don't learn. And COVID, whether it be toilet paper or you name it, canned goods, we all rushed in a panic to get this stuff, and we're willing to pay anything or do anything to protect it. And everybody panicked for the need of trucks and created a false economy. What interested me most about this, and I think finance companies really need to learn from this, is trucks that went up 40 and 50%, again, really for no reason other than a false demand. They were financing them and didn't increase the required money down. So now, a year later, or 6 months later, or 8 months later, these trucks are all coming back to haunt everybody. And we had a fellow the other day that wanted to trade 2 trucks in. He's had them for a year and a half. He's only paid about $20,000 off on those trucks. Those trucks he paid $110,000 for, and a good customer, good trucks. He's been able to use them and put a lot of miles on, but unfortunately, when you want to buy out of them, you still got to pay all the interest that's supposed to have accrued over the 5-year term of the loan.
Right. Yeah.
And he's owes $95,000 on them still, and they're worth maybe 50.
Are they worth that much? I'm even surprised they're worth that much.
Yeah, well, I have to be honest. I might be a little generous there, but it's unbelievable. And I see stuff going through the auction. Richie's just had an auction on Wednesday and Thursday, and I was not surprised with the results. I actually did put some. When I say I, collectively, Rush Canada put some trucks in the sale. We got what I thought they would bring, and I was happy with that. I would have always liked to see more,
Right.
but the prices have come down. Rico, to answer your question, they're down to realistic values again, and it's taken the end user still time, because they all paid very high prices for some of these trucks, and trucks that really, and I think if you remember back, I said to you, we're trying to maintain our prices. We're not trying to gouge. We did a very good job, I think, of keeping, real market prices, where a lot of guys really overpaid, and they're paying the price for it now and walking away from trucks. I mean, you see the big, even the used trucks sales guys and some of the fleets all going broke right now. So
yeah, it's a lot going on. Question for you, Ray, because like I say, we're privileged to have you here in all of your years of experience. Have you ever seen anything quite like what's happening over the past 3-4 years since you've been in the industry?
I kind of wish we talked before this. No, so it's this industry, like no other, I think, is very cyclical, more so than any other. Maybe I should say it that way. And what happens in the trucking industry, what I have experienced, in Chuck and Rico, you can correct me, but what I see is, if we start to see a weaker economy in the truck business, 6 months down the road, we see it in real life everywhere else.
Yeah.
Definitely. We're the canary in the coal mine.
100%.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy. And so I think to answer that question, I have seen it, maybe not to this degree. I think the industry has changed. The people in the industry has changed, if I'm allowed to say that. And I think where Chuck and I do business, I was bragging to someone about this the other day, and Chuck and I don't mean to stroke you here, but Chuck and I had met 30 years ago, didn't do any business, but we were familiar with each other in the industry, and he had an office around the corner from where I worked. And we got back together maybe 6 or 7 years ago. Chuck, he's probably bought, I'm going to say 20 trucks through his company from me. Not once has he come to my office. He doesn't even know where I sit. Has he come to look at a truck? He just called me and trusted me. And I appreciate that, like you wouldn't believe. That industry isn't like that anymore. And that's the sad part. And these people are when I say these people, the industry has changed. So every dealership is requiring a deposit or a down payment. Chuck's phone call with me is still good. So people's expectations have changed. It's more greed driven and short-term gain, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, and everybody talks about. I definitely agree with you, and that's across the board. Everybody talks about how much technology and everything has changed practically every industry. And I think the thing that we're losing with the whole technology and streamlining and making everything so quick we're losing that human touch. We're losing that human interaction, so to speak, and it's turned a lot of relationships, like you say, it's turned them very, very cold, very, very transactional, and a lot of times, you know, that can be detrimental. I understand the streamline and like the efficiency of it, but like I say, it from the human aspect, it definitely kind of leaves a little bit of a lot more to be desired.
You know, when I worked at Mack Truck, there was a company that bought always trucks from us. And I asked him one day why he did that. And I knew him quite well through another industry I was involved in. And he said, you know, back in the day when he started his trucking company, he was going on some hard times. That OEM supported him through that hard times and financially a little bit and gave him some breaks. And that man has been loyal. He's since passed away, and his son has taken on the role, but has been equally as loyal. And it's so neat to see that. And you know, that's the part I love about, you know, being in the business that long, because we got an opportunity to see that. We've got an opportunity to socialize with those people and befriend those people.
Right. So Ray, is going back a little bit more in depth as well, is there anything that right now in the used truck market, how, if someone's in the market, what should be their approach? What should be what kind of other than of course having a relationship, but how should they approach as far as doing their research when it comes time to, okay, I'm in the market, what do they need to be looking out for?
Sure. I think, you know, what this has done, the market currently is doing is it's educating people. So, you know, the need to have, like, and if you drive around here, Rico, you'll see the yards, there's hundreds of trucks parked right now. And that's because perhaps a little bit of overbuying. But I think they really have to establish whether they need the vehicle, make sure it was maintained properly, and again, make sure they don't overpay. And I think maintenance is, you know, and Chuck had mentioned the DEF earlier, more oil changes than less. DEF filter cleaning. People aren't doing that until there's a DEF failure and it's too late then. They're running into a huge bill. So I think when they're looking, again, establish a rapport with somebody that you can trust, somebody that you can work with consistently. And, you know, there's an up and down. And you know, I feel bad because there was a time that Chuck maybe paid $3,000 or $4,000 too much during COVID. And, but then when prices get lower or before that, when there's a deal, because we have that relationship, I'd say, hey, Chuck or Glenn, here's some truck that maybe if you're looking, this would be a good thing. So it's all, I still think, relationship based.
Right, 100%. Everything falls back. You know, big business for the last 20 years has really been trying to push or pull that personal relationship away and have everything done on RFQs, request for quotation, and just take the personal side of things. But when everything messes up, it's the personal side that always saves the day. And, you know, you talk about the new people in trucking and maybe the new people in finance that made these blunders and bought, you know, the new people in trucking went and they got greedy and they just overbought. And, you know, it serves them right because, yeah, they were greedy. But number two, they didn't keep a lot of these, especially the older companies that brought in younger management. They didn't keep any gray hair around that knew what it was like to be, you know, to sail a ship through a storm. And, you know, tough storms make for great sailors. So you have all these inexperienced sailors on these, you know, on these ships or these running these companies that had never seen this, overreacted, bought crazy amounts of trucks, put anybody in them. All the companies that had been around for years, as a rule, there's a few that we know of, and there's one recently, I think last week in Texas, I think it was Arnold Transport, 92 years old, that went bankrupt. But there may be, you know, who knows? Maybe it was taken over by somebody. I didn't read the background story,
Pride Logistics had bought them out.
Oh, really? I didn't realize they were. Oh, okay, that explains it. For our listeners that aren't familiar, our U.S. listeners especially, Pride is a Canadian-based company that had a big footprint in the United States as well, and
they have a huge dealership here in Atlanta.
Yes, and they just overexpanded amongst other things, and unfortunately, there's allegedly, so I read, a 1.6 billion, ladies and gentlemen, billion with a B, bankruptcy there. So that's put a lot of there was a lot of trucks in that are going to probably at some point see the used truck market, which is going to flood it. Ray, that brings me to my next question. If we take the existing amount of trucks in the available used truck pool, and we take those trucks and we just sell them to new people that are starting out, are we not just taking the problem we have right now with overcapacity and continuing that problem? Because we haven't taken the trucks out of the market.
I think, I don't know where you're right. I think the problem is we've allowed too many people to get into the industry.
I agree.
We've allowed too many people to buy trucks. We talk about green effect, and again, this is turned very political, and I apologize.
Don't apologize.
But we allow all of this to go on, and I drive around our neighborhood, and I drive around. The government needs to get involved. Trucks are parked in fields that they shouldn't be. A friend of mine has 5 acres, and there's another 5 acres beside him with a house, and all of a sudden there's 3 transport trucks parked there, one broken down and in pieces. And how would you like that in your neighborhood?
Oh man.
I was going to look at a repo the other day for a finance company, and I could not. It was in an industrial strip. There were so many broken down trucks. I actually couldn't drive into the garage area. I had to park my pickup and walk through. If there was a fire there, everything's going up. There's no way.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah, right. But we're managing the wrong things.
I agree.
In my opinion, and giving grants for people to start these businesses up when we're not managing the existing businesses properly, and it's really unfortunate, and I feel comfortable saying that because of the age I'm at and because of being in the industry this long. But
you're right.
It's not
you're 1,000% right. And all the stuff, Rico and I have been preaching this stuff since we first met, which is 10 years ago, and
maybe a little longer than that.
Yeah. and one of the things that the biggest problem where this all stems from, it stems from 2 things. Number one, it's the factoring companies, and it's the finance companies and banks. And I realize factoring companies do a service out there. I'm not saying they don't, but it's a service that you use when you need cash flow. And I've been preaching this. Rico's been teaching this. You cannot use a factoring company as your bank. The money is too expensive. Now, there was a period of time when, freight was like $5 and $10 and $12 a mile. I saw crazy stuff. I saw stuff up to $17 a mile before I left. Okay. $17 a mile. I'm not exaggerating, guys. If you remember when that road, the highway caved in out west, and they were allowing the trucks to go through the U.S., and at that point, the rate was $17 a mile, and we had that stupid, and I will say stupid publicly, truckers convoy going on in Ottawa, which made things even worse around the same time, and freight rates went right up. So really, if you were paying 5% to the factoring company, it didn't matter. You were making lots of money. But when freight is $1.80 a mile, and you've got to give 5% to that factoring company, you cannot survive. And when I got into this business, if you wanted, and this is like almost 50 years ago, you had to put money aside. If you wanted to buy a truck and go and start it on your own, you better, back in those days, and I'm talking about 1974, you better have $50,000 put away in 1974 to cover your expenses for the first 30 days, actually first 45 days, because you needed fuel money, which was a lot cheaper, and you needed toll money, and you needed all sorts of other things. And if you didn't have $50,000 that was after you bought your truck, okay, to finance that truck, you didn't do it. And we didn't have bankruptcies. And that's what's happened now is people just over leverage themselves. And that's why we have so many trucks, because they were able to get into it. There was no barrier of entry. It's actually, I can't speak about other jurisdictions, but I can honestly tell you that in Ontario, it's much easier to get a trucking license than it is a hunting license. I'm not making this up, okay? There is no barrier of entry.
Well, and you know, the sad part is, you know, they'll register an office or an address in the East Coast because it's cheaper to insure trucks there, but the business is actually running out of Ontario.
Yes.
You know, anything to skirt the rules, they're doing. And that's, you know, that goes back to where I started earlier. Like, if we started to govern this more properly, the companies that have been around forever and have really and pay their taxes, aren't doing Drivers Inc. and you know, go back to that loyalty that we talked about earlier. We need to protect those customers or those companies more so than you know, we've got a bunch of guys that have bought property in the Caledon area and are starting to park trucks there because they say it's too expensive in Mississauga. And I said, well, that's not legal. You're not allowed to do that. They said, well, it's cheaper to pay the fine than it is to pay parking in Toronto or Mississauga. So they don't even care. They actually brag about how they're breaking the law. And, you know, it's unfortunate. It really is.
Well, you know what, Ray, and in defense of them, I will say one thing, okay, just to, when I started out in this industry, I skirted some laws too, and I was a gypsy, and I did not have authority, and I leased the truck directly to the customer, and worked for a pseudo driver service that never 100% existed, but it was there. So that's how we skirted the law in those days. And,
all right, Chuck, we don't know the statute of limitations in Canada now.
We will come and visit you, Chuck.
You know, we'll do a show on that one night, but I had a long, arduous battle with the Ontario Ministry of Transport in my younger years. And it was interesting, but I totally agree with you, Ray. You know what? And I'm not telling people to go and break laws because I don't think it's the right way to run a business. And on that note, all these companies that I've seen that started out and did it right, okay, they paid their drivers properly through payroll, they obeyed the laws. Guess what? Number one, they didn't get hurt during this big change in the economy and in the trucking environment. They've slowed down a little bit, but they didn't get hurt. They didn't get killed. Yeah. Number two, an awful lot of them have sold within the last 2 years. Where management, because I grew up with all these guys, okay? We all started out around the same time, back in the early 70s. So we're all around the same age. We're, you know, between 66 and 75 somewhere. And a whole bunch of them have sold for great money. Yes. Because they did things right. And a buyer, which is, and somebody had a lot of money, isn't going to buy a company that's not run right. Because I can tell you, when you sell a company or you sell shares in a company, they will, if you sell to a good buyer, the diligence, like, it's months, and this is after your house is clean. You know, I don't want to digress too much, but when you, before you sell a business, it's more, when you sell your house, you have to paint it and make sure your basement's decluttered and all the rest of it. You know, send the dog to the mother-in-laws or whatever. before you can sell your house. Your business, everything, it's a 3-year process. If you're even thinking of selling a business, you've got to clean everything up so that when they ask for something, you've got it. Okay, so everything has to be clean, and if it's not, they won't buy. And I remember years ago there was a leasing company. There was a trucking company, but they ran the same way we did. And there was an Asian interest that was going to buy them, and they gave them $100,000 deposit, and then they went in and started looking through. And when they found out that back in those days it was a great business, it was amazing profits, but it wasn't really a legal business. They walked away. They left their $100,000 on the table and they just walked away. And the same as when many, many, many years ago, when we were involved in litigation back, 35 years ago, we had somebody say, listen, you got to take this thing public. It's brilliant. And I was being schooled how to take traffics public. And there was some questions as to what we were doing with the Ontario Ministry of Transport at the time. And as soon as they found that out, they said, no, you can't take this thing public. So that's the problem when you don't do things 100%. You're parking trucks where they shouldn't be parked and you're paying fines and stuff. It doesn't look good. You think it's nothing right now, but those become skeletons in your closet, okay? And it doesn't say a lot about your integrity. And when people are buying a business, and that's when you're going to go into a trucking, buy a trucking entity, you're buying somebody's life, and you want to make sure there's integrity there because there's great value in integrity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without it,
Ray, most of our listeners, the majority of our people, 1-2 truck guys, maybe a small fleet. I want to ask you the pros and cons of buying used equipment from a dealership network such as yourself and the guys and the people that you represent versus the one-offs, the lots on the side of the road or the smaller truck dealer or whatever. Is there, besides, and I understand that there may be a price differential and stuff like that, but what are the pros and the cons? We talked about relationships and things of that nature. Sure. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit and tell us some pros and cons of dealing with a larger network versus a smaller, very small dealership or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you look at Chuck, for example, he flies around the country looking at antique trucks and buys them. He knows what he's looking at. He knows what he wants. And there's that familiarity of the trucks. The people that are maybe not as mechanically inclined, it's better to go to somebody like a dealer that can support you. And I think a reputable dealer. And I think, there's used truck dealers and then there's used truck dealers. There's Kijiji. But, when I say there's used truck dealers and used truck dealers, like just in our GTA area, the Greater Toronto area, Rico, there's probably 35 used truck dealers. Very few actually have a shingle, a nameplate, international dealer, a Mack truck dealer, a Volvo dealer. The one thing when you're doing, what you have to remember, and it's like buying a car. If you're going to buy a used car, you want to buy it on Kijiji and hope that the odometer is right. You want to hope that they fixed it properly. As a shingle dealer, as an OEM dealer, we have a certain standard that we have to adhere to. Now, let's not forget we're buying a mechanical piece of equipment. Right. Anything can go wrong. Sure. But, we cannot spin the odometer back. We do not bandage things. We try to fix things because we want Rico to come back and buy again from me. We have a certain standard that we have to live by. If we don't, guess what? Navistar can take our franchise away from us. Nobody wants that. That's our bread and butter. Our Rush trucks and Mr. Tallman that own Rush, they're moral people that, they want their customers come in and feel comfortable where they're buying so that they'll come back again. And we talk about this all the time. When I go to buy a vehicle, I want to know that it's been well maintained. And so part of us, for example, Rico, we have a big fleet, lease and rental fleet. So our trucks are maintained by Rush on a regular basis. So that gives me a level of comfort selling. Navistar has put a really great warranty out, an OEM warranty that we're now able to attach to the used trucks. Now there's a cost to that, of course, but the one thing, again, it's an OEM warranty. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, take pictures, send it in, get approval. It's a very good warranty. So if you're 10 grand less or whatever the case, if you're comfortable mechanically and you see a truck and you on the side of the street at a driveway and you think, yeah, I like that truck. And if the value is there, what you're looking for, sure, go ahead and buy it. If it's a one-off, but again, it's relationships you want to go for. Quite often we have guys that do buy trucks from us and they may break down, but they may also call me and say, where can I get this fixed? Or it's in the shop in Texas right now. The guys at Rush there. Can you give them a call for me? There is that, but it's really it's a level of comfort, I think, and what your own base knowledge is to go from. I don't know if I answered that properly for you.
You did. Well, you did, and there is that. I've dealt with you, and I've dealt with Rush, and you know what? You're true to your words, and that's why I didn't comb Kijiji looking for equipment when we needed trucks when I was running traffics. I just called you and said, Ray, we need some trucks.
Yeah.
So some people may be asking themselves, and I'm looking, some people may be asking themselves, why do you guys, we understand Chuck's Canadian, but most of our listeners are in the U.S. Why are you guys talking to Ray that's up there in Canada? Why would we go all the way to Canada to get a truck? Ray, if you don't mind, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the advantages, and we're doing, and this is another thing, ladies and gentlemen. We spent a little bit of time talking about relationships. Well, guess what? If you're a listener of this podcast and a listener of this show, we're kind of helping make a warm reception for you, so that when you do reach out to Ray, it gives you the opportunity to say, hey, Ray, I saw you on the Rates and Lanes with Rico and Chuck. I'm in the market for a used truck or whatever. Do you got anything? But it's kind of speak to the financial advantages of maybe buying Canadian, maybe even flying up to come and pick your truck up, or even if need be, it's not really cost prohibitive to even have the truck shipped. Kind of talk a little bit about that, Ray. I'm gonna give you a chance to give yourself a little bit of a commercial here.
Sure. Oh well, I appreciate that always. But let me start by saying you don't have to buy Canadian. You don't have to buy from me. You know me now because of Chuck and Rico. You can call me, and I know tons of people in the U.S. and Rush has 140 dealerships there. But I also worked for Mack Truck, Mack Corporate for 10 years. I know a lot of those people. If we don't have the brand for you, I'll certainly set you up with someone that you can trust. You don't have to buy from me, or my sales guys. We'd love it, but you don't have to do that. But if you're in Atlanta, so I started the call with having breakfast with Rico's friend Eddie. Right. I said Florida, but that was on my way to Florida. I met him in Atlanta for breakfast on a Sunday morning. He has bought, I can't remember, I'm embarrassed to say, 3 or 5 trucks from me, again, sight unseen. And it's just because Rico gave him my number. So I just felt it was really important. He hadn't bought anything for a couple of years, but I happened to be just going through and I wanted to have breakfast with him. And it was cool. It was really a lot of fun. Thank you, Rico, for that.
Absolutely.
But if you do want to buy in Canada, it can absolutely be a one-stop shop. And again, even if it's not at my dealership, our dealership, let me rephrase that, I apologize. If you see something somewhere else, I probably know those guys. I can help you look at it. I can help you get it home. We export a lot of trucks into the U.S. Keep in mind also the dollar value, and that's, I think a lot of Americans don't understand this, is the U.S. exchange. Even if you don't buy a truck from are interested in buying trucks, you should come to Canada for a holiday because it's 37% cheaper for you here in Canada than it is anywhere else right
And
now.
your truck is 37% cheaper, ladies and gentlemen. So get the hell up here if you're going to buy a truck. Don't be silly and throw your money away. I hate to take away business from our American friends, but there's a plug for our Canadians.
Yeah, and it is true, and you know, a lot of Americans don't understand that U.S. exchange versus the Canadian dollar, and your dollar is so much more. So, you know, when I went to Florida in February, I'm paying 37% more of my money to get anything. So whatever was $1 there, it cost me $1.37 Canadian. So you're better off to come here. But again, you don't have to. We appreciate it a lot, but just call me. I think I average 67 phone calls a day right now, and then I've got my Teams meetings and everything. But I'm always happy to help. Here, when you buy a truck here in Canada that you're going to take back to the U.S., you will have to pay FET on it. Understand that, and that's on the purchase value. Because when trucks come to Canada, when they're manufactured for Canada, we're not charged the federal excise tax. So when you purchase a truck here and the first retail use, so if you're the end user, you will have to pay an FET, federal excise tax on that.
So is that 18%?
No, I think, you know, I'm embarrassed. I think it's 11 or 12%. I can't even remember.
Okay, so it's gone down.
Yeah. So you'll pay that. Shipping trucks. So we mentioned Eddie earlier. I arranged to have the trucks delivered directly to his place from here in Toronto. We have lots of roading companies like you guys have there, and they're all pretty good. And again, I've got relationships with most of them. So we had the trucks delivered. Actually, one of them was delivered right to his house instead of his place of business. But so we can do all of that. And but if you want to buy a truck and actually visit Canada as well, you can do that too. And Denise and I will show you some places around here that are really kind of cool that you maybe wouldn't see otherwise. And we're close to Niagara Falls, which is a neat thing to see as well. So yeah, you know what? There's lots of advantages. The dollar exchange is one. There's lots of trucks here like there are in the US right now as well. And again, you don't have to buy from us. If you just want connections in the US, we can set you up with some of our Rush dealers or other dealers that I feel comfortable dealing with, that you should feel comfortable
But even with the tax, you're still, paying the tax. If it's 11 or 12%, you're still saving almost 25% by buying up here. Absolutely.
And trucks are spec'd similarly, so you don't have to worry about that. So it's pretty good. You don't have to worry.
So that's one of the, I wanted to definitely wanted us to definitely speak on that and talk about that, because I don't think that a lot of people, I know I was oblivious to it until we began the relationship and started talking about trucks and things of that nature. And I was like, man, it's really kind of a no-brainer if you're in the market to go north of the border and see what you can find, because it's definitely some gem deals that could be had. And but yeah, I'm glad you spoke to that, Ray, because I really wanted people to understand that. And Ray is, I tell you, he's so kind and gracious. You see, you guys notice how he did that. He don't buy from me. Just
But and I actually do mean that. Like it's fun to talk to everybody, and if we can help, great. If we have stuff here, buy it from us, because we're going to stand behind it and we're going to look after you. But if I don't find something for you, one of my sales guys or our sales team will, right? It is pretty cool that way. And we've got a really good bunch of guys in the US as well that I could put you up in touch with as well. So
I say that jokingly, but really, in all seriousness, it kind of speaks to his character, though. He's not in it just to try to make a sale. He's in it to try to actually really help you guys. And that's I jokingly was messing with Ray, poking at him a little bit. But that definitely speaks to the character of the man, because he's not just trying to put a quick buck in his pocket. He's actually trying to look out for our guys and for you in particular. So that's definitely a feather in his cap.
Well, because he's looking way beyond the next sale. Ray, I've got to ask you a question. If some of our American listeners want to contact you and buy equipment, and it comes with an international or a Navistar warranty, but they export that equipment from you into the USA. Is that warranty still void or still valid?
It is valid. And that's, that's the beauty of buying, there's some great aftermarket warranty companies out there as well.
Yes.
But when you buy a truck that has the OEM warranty, and that, I think they're all doing it right now, but Navistar during COVID has done a great job. And
Yes.
we've got a guy right now that's kind of our rep from the US. His name's Lou Haddad. He helps us a lot. But when they actually here's the difference. When you buy an OEM warranty, it actually gets attached to the serial number, to the VIN number of the truck. So when you bring that truck, and I'm going to just use our brand as well, to an OEM international dealership, you don't have to try to remember if it has warranty. Because as soon as they put that number into the dealer portal or into the service portal, it says, hey guys, there's still 3 years, 200,000 miles left warranty on this. Where if you buy an aftermarket warranty, and sometimes you're forced to do that, you have to make sure you remind the shop that there is an aftermarket warranty on it, and to make sure that you call those people first to make sure it covers this or that, right? So that's it. To answer your question, yeah, Chuck, it is valid for sure. It follows the VIN number.
Ray, can we just go over, if you wouldn't mind, for just for a minute, exactly what the warranty is for the listeners? I find this fascinating. I really do.
Putting you on the spot again, Ray.
No, you know what? And I don't have my memory stick here with. It's just over
just
there.
roughly. Like
So
how many miles?
they have it. 1 second. I'm just going to see if
I apologize. I didn't mean to put Ray on.
No. I think
it's really. I think a warranty is really important when you're buying a used piece of equipment, and that's why I always like dealing with Ray, because I just had that extra sense of security.
While Ray's looking, for years, and this was before, and this may even stand still, if you're in the market and you're looking to get started with a cheap truck. When we were talking years ago, we were talking maybe getting started with a $10,000 truck. Now that may still be a possibility, but we were always talking about pre-emission trucks back then, and that's just a plain little starter truck. And we definitely were pushing those initially, but now with all of the different things with the emissions and things of that nature, I'm not so sure how realistic it is to find a decent $10,000 used truck. I'm sure that there are $10,000 trucks out there to be had, but how good of shape is it actually going to be in, especially with all the different emissions that we're dealing with? Because
you're just buying
$10,000
you're buying junk. Unfortunately, I'm combing the used truck market constantly, looking for stuff that I can add to my collection. And at $10,000, you're buying a what the Tackaberries call a donor truck. That's a truck where you're going to take the doors off when one of your doors goes, or you're going to take the motor out, or you're going to take the starter off. That's what you're buying.
Remember, Chuck, when we were talking about the $10,000 trucks, we were talking about people, because a lot of people were talking about how they were having so many problems with the warranties. They were having so many problems with taking stuff to the dealership, and it's sitting at the back of the lot because they're waiting to get approval for the warranty, things of that nature. And a lot of times people were having the feeling of the warranty really wasn't worth the paper that it was printed on. But now if you've got a manufacturer's warranty, like how what Ray is explaining, how different that can be, because the whole process of getting the warranty, because like I say, you have to go through the process of, when you're dealing with a warranty company, they're trying to negotiate the rate, the mechanics rate and everything of that nature with the dealership. You have to go through the whole approval process. So they can't, they have to go through the process of identifying what actually went wrong. Okay, now we have to send in documentation to prove what's wrong with it. And then you have to wait for the process of the manufacturer of the warranty company to come back to actually approve the process of getting it done.
Well, a lot of shops.
So it was a very, very archaic kind of a bogged down whole bureaucratic, for lack of a better term, bureaucratic process to get anything approved and done. And by the time you got anything approved and done, your truck may have been down for a month or two.
Yeah. Sure.
So it hurt a lot of people, but with a manufacturer's warranty, I think you're in a little bit of a different league, a little
100%.
bit of a different process.
So I was able to pull this up quickly here. Well, maybe not quickly, but so if you're looking, and I'll use a Class 8 truck, right? Heavy duty truck. Right now, Navistar is offering, so I'm going to say the LT, like the highway tractor, okay?
Right.
A 6 month, a 12 month, a 24-month program. 6 month is I'm going to round up. If I'm $25 or $50, I'll round up, okay? So $3,700 for a 6 month program. That's engine and after treatment. $7,400 for a 1 year. And then your $11,400 for 2 years. Now that is 2 years unlimited miles.
Whoa.
1 year unlimited miles and 6 months unlimited miles. If you want to add your transmission, your axle and chassis, your extended vehicle coverage, you're another $1,750 for 6 months, $2,630. This is to cover your transmission and axle. So you remember the first one was just engine and after treatment. So when I look at what you asked, what does that cover? There's actually, Chuck, even, which is really cool. Navistar has done a towing coverage as well that you can add to that. So 6 month towing coverage is $300. The 12 month is $450. These are Canadian numbers, okay, guys? So it's and $750 for 2 years. Now, the beauty of that is it's $550 coverage per event, unlimited events, but to a maximum of $550 towing.
I see. Okay.
Did I articulate that properly?
Yes, perfectly. Yeah.
Okay. So now when I look at this, so group one of this coverage, so
I think the 2 year is the one most of our listeners, if they're going to come up here and buy a truck, I would imagine most of them are going to figure they're going to be in for a 2 year commitment.
So, and let me tell you, this is from model year 2017 to 2023. Okay,
right. That's a pretty good range as well.
Yeah, and when I said unlimited mileage, there is a stop. So meaning if the truck had 200,000 miles on it, if the truck gets to 750,000 miles, then it's over. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
So is that the maximum amount of, like, once that odometer with any of these programs hits 750, it's done?
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to know your math. It's a mathematics equation. How many miles do you run? You know damn well if you're going to if the truck's got 300,000 miles and you're going to stick a team in it, you know that you're going to be good for a year. So you buy the year's package, and you know that in a year it's like the truck is done and get rid of it and start all over again.
Yeah, okay. And we have customers, Chuck, that they'll buy. Sorry, they'll buy.
Start your engine.
My neighbor's calling me. We have guys that'll buy, or people that will buy a 6 month warranty because they find they get to know the truck after 6 months. So what that also does, we'll go back to our earlier conversation, Rico, that kind of gives you, if you don't know that person, that you go and do a dealership and you don't know that person, like you and Chuck know me, at least if you buy a 6 month warranty, if you're looking after it properly, if anything blows up in that 6 months, it's covered. And then from then on, the truck. You have your own level of comfort with that truck because you've driven it enough now. You know how it's been maintained. But it's really so this covers so much.
Ray, can I ask you something? If I buy a 6 month warranty,
yeah,
and then my 6 months is going to be up on Tuesday, can I phone you and go, Ray, you know what? I love the truck, but I have some concerns. Can I buy another year or 2 years at that point? Or you wouldn't tell me 2 years at that point. but can I buy another year or another 6 months? Will you extend it?
Yeah, they call it a wrap. They'll wrap that. So I'll give you an example. If you remember earlier, I talked about the guy that wanted to trade a couple trucks that he paid and he still owes 95 grand
Yeah.
on now.
Yes.
He's actually just in the process of buying